How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Church and State with Spencer Sanderson. I'm your host, Spencer Sanderson, and today's guest is a Mississippi State University student who is the president of Mississippi State College Republicans and founder of Timeless Truth Media, which is dedicated to covering current events from a biblical perspective, much like this show. Along with his leadership positions, he is currently in his junior year pursuing majors in political science, philosophy, and religion. Please help me welcome a fellow workaholic to the show, Mr. Alex Martin. Alex, appreciate you taking the time to be here, man.
Thank you, Spencer. It's a pleasure to be on.
Absolutely. So before, because I know you're very active in the political space. You had an interview or
Yes.
an internship with the White House. But before we get into that, I want to get into your testimony a little bit because the purpose of this show is much like your media company to try and be a bridge between society and Scripture. Because especially in today's day and age, you have a lot of Christians wondering, I feel a certain way about this, but how does Scripture say I could feel? So I just want to know, did you grow up a Christian? And if yes or no, how did your journey with Christ begin?
Yeah, no, I've grown up a Christian my entire life. My parents were kind of on and off in the ministry, but I grew up in a Christian household, had great Christian parents, but I didn't necessarily really live for Christ. I think until about around 16 or 17 was when I really started to get serious about it, and then my senior year rededicated my life to Christ, and just have been going strong ever since, or at least doing my best to.
That's awesome. And I always, whenever I give my testimony, I kind of start that off saying, like, look, y'all, I grew up in the church, but that does not make me 1% better than anybody that doesn't, because I've had my fair share. I felt like I've had to been resaved.
Oh,
I guess
100%.
I would describe it to people as I never fully strayed from Christ, but there was a time my senior year where it was like Saul on the road to Damascus. It was like a big
Hmm.
bright light that just kind of like, hey, you know, chin up, focus up. You gotta
Oh,
lock
100%.
in here. So that's really good to hear. So when you were going to church, were you involved in any sort of leadership positions? Did you do small groups, maybe worship team? What about your volunteer work in your church?
Yeah, so I was never musically gifted with singing or playing guitar or anything like that. God bless people that can do that, but y'all don't want to hear me do that. But I was involved with my youth group, so I would help kind of lead and facilitate small groups or discussions on Wednesday nights. I would also help out with the media team. I would run like a little like side camera or whatever when the pastor was speaking. So I did that. But now here in Starkville, I go to the assembly. And I also do like some of their media stuff there, like help with their slides on Sunday morning and things like that. But I've always been kind of involved in teaching and helping Christians, in their discipleship walk.
That's neat. 'Cause I started. I think the first volunteer work I really ever did with church, we were on the hospitality team, which meant rain or shine, you were holding the doors,
Hmm.
and started off that. And then when I got into youth group, I got a chance to lead small groups at some point. I shared my testimony with a big group of people that were there, and then I got started on the worship team. And it's funny
Oh,
you say,
wow.
God bless the people that can do that, because the first few times I played for worship team, I would be fine if nobody ever hears how that worked out, because I had just
Hmm.
started playing guitar. And my friend's mother, her name is Miss Kim. She's very, very sweet. She came to me and recommended that I join the worship team. She's like, look, you may not be super good at guitar yet, but we need folks. You've got a good heart of service. Come in. And then the first service I played, my hands were so sweaty that I dropped
Oh
my
man.
pick and had to
Oh
use
my
my
gosh.
had to use my fingernail. But good thing is, it was only up from there. So whenever I asked you for a picture to make a graphic for this show, you sent me a picture and I opened it up. I was like, you are standing in the White House press briefing room. So that was
Uh,
a shock to me. So you told me you had some time in the White House as an internship with the vice president. Tell me all about that, because that is a tremendous opportunity.
yeah, so it's definitely been the highlight of my short 20 years on this earth. But yeah, so I was an intern in the White House internship program over this last summer. I was up there for around 2.5 months in the office of the vice president, but specifically under his policy advisors. And so I wasn't tasked with anything like very cool or big or uh, grand, but I was able to do
Didn't get
like
to
a
go to
lot.
any classified meetings or anything.
No, no, no. For some reason they don't let interns go to classified meetings. I haven't figured that one out yet, but all jokes. But yeah, no, I got to do a lot of cool research and of course got to meet a lot of cool people. But it was just, writing a lot of briefs, reading a lot of things, helping, facilitate the office and make sure, like my, superiors and advisors, had
Mm-hmm.
everything that they need to, effectively advise the vice president on policy stuff. So I was never in those meetings, but I'm sure that hopefully I helped in some way, shape, or form.
Well, that's a heck of a resume builder there. You can say I helped it. I helped the vice president's team advise the vice president. People look at that and go, "Wow, okay."
Oh, 100%.
Were you able to go to the military parade while you were there?
Yes, yeah, I was there.
Oh, wow.
Army 250. We
Mm-hmm.
were able to get special little passes, and so but yeah, we got up a little closer than like the general public, which was very cool. And we were right across the street, so the president and everybody was on the other side of the street. So we were looking at them while all the tanks and very cool technology and drones and
Wow.
soldiers marched by. It was a crazy time. It was awesome.
I bet that I watched the broadcast off Fox, and that fireworks show alone was something else.
The fireworks on the National Mall is a top 10 experience of mine. You don't understand how impactful something like that is until you actually see it. Like there was people, I mean, from Constitution, which is the street, all the way back
Mm-hmm.
behind the Washington Monument. It was packed, and Lee Greenwood is singing, God bless the USA, and you have fireworks going off. It was probably the most patriotic I've ever felt. It was
Well, I guess if you want to listen to the opinions of mainstream media, apparently you're a liar because nobody showed up and it was a bust.
Well, I mean, if you're there, 5 hours early in the pour down rain, there's not going to be many people there.
Yeah.
But by the time it was showtime, everybody was there and it was packed. I have videos and pictures on my phone. And you can't even see the end like of where people are. There were so many people.
Oh yeah, I would see under those articles and tweets, people would post like wide shots, and you could not see a single blade of grass around the Washington
No,
Monument. It's like, well, this is a lot of people for nobody, isn't it?
no, yeah. I mean, there was a ton of people, contrary to what you might hear.
So I assume through that you got to meet the vice president and President Trump, correct?
Yes, yeah, I got to meet both of them. Thankfully, got to meet the vice
Wow.
president once, and then got to interact with the president a lot more than we thought. When we
Did y'all share
saw
a
him,
Diet Coke?
we did not. They saved those only for him. We aren't privy to those.
Only the
Uh,
best.
only the best for the best, right? So that's completely fine. But yeah, no, we got to the first time I met him was maybe 2 weeks before the end of the internship. He was going boarding Marine One, and all the interns were kind of out there at the rope line, and he sees us waving at him, and he comes over and he talked to every one of us. So there was 96 of us in the internship class, and he talked to every single one of us, and asked us where we were from, if we were enjoying our time, if he could do anything different. So it was a very cool experience. And then we got to see him the following Monday for our class picture for our internship, which was really cool. And I got to stand right behind him, not right beside him, but right behind him.
You can say, well, Mr. President, if you can get me passes to the next State of the Union, that'd be good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would love to see something like that.
Well, that's cool. How up close did you ever get to step into the Oval?
I never stepped into the Oval, but
Mm,
if I looked through the doorway and into
yeah.
the Oval. Um, they had the little rope up, and obviously you're not going to go in when the rope's up, but it was very cool getting to see it. I mean, from right in the doorway. It's very very bright and gold, and it looks very presidential, but also very much like the president's personality.
Yep, and apparently, if you cross those ropes, a lot of guys wearing black suits will come meet you very quickly.
Yes, they're all great until it's time to do their job, and then you don't want to meet them like
Oh,
that.
did you
They're
get
great
to
guys.
did you get to have the chance to meet any other cabinet members? I assume if you were in the briefing room, did you get to meet Caroline Levitt?
I got to meet Caroline Levitt, but I did not get to meet her in the briefing room. So
Okay.
whenever that picture was taken, it was during the evening. So because they only do tours like that and stuff like at certain times of the day or whatever.
Yeah.
But I got to meet Caroline Levitt. She came and spoke to us because she was a White House intern herself many years ago. I think back in
Yeah, she has a
2012.
really neat story.
Yeah, she's incredible. But I did get to meet her, and we all got like a big group picture with her. Then I also got to meet the second lady, which was very cool. So that was a great honor.
Yeah, imagine Usha. She looks, or Miss Usha. She looks very, very nice on camera, and I assume she was even sweeter in person.
she is one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet, and she's also one of the smartest people you'll ever meet. I mean, Yale Law, and had a law practice up until JD was inaugurated, and so she's an
Mm-hmm.
awesome person, seriously.
So we've kind of covered how you first got started into politics. So of course we know with recent events we've tragically lost a great friend of, I wouldn't just say a great friend of the Republican Party, I'd say a great friend of the nation because of his ability
Yeah.
to reach hearts and minds, Mr. Charlie Kirk. But when you were growing up, even before you got a deep interest in politics, did you listen to Charlie Kirk a lot, and was he an inspiration for a lot of what you do?
Yeah, no, Charlie, I can very confidently say was the first trusted voice that I actually heard within like the
Same
Christian
here.
conservative space. He, I mean, I remember being 12 years old at my grandparents' house, and I don't know how I found Charlie, but I remember listening to him and just being captivated that he would go to college campuses, and it was kind of like when I was growing up, it was kind of seemed like the powerhouse of people. You had Ben Shapiro going to campuses, and Michael Knowles and Charlie Kirk, and all these guys that just seemed to be lighting the world on fire. But Charlie was the one that I was, uh, most interested to listen to and things like that. So he was a huge inspiration, and even getting me interested in politics to begin with. He's part of the reason I had the nickname Mr. Conservative during high school. I would take his talking points and would try to emulate what he did the best that I could, throughout my classes and things like
Oh
that.
yeah, I did the same thing. I think you'd be hard pressed to find any teacher that I've ever had that would not say he talks a lot and he's very opinionated. Some
Hmm.
might argue that's a good thing, some might argue that's a bad, but every every parent teacher conference was he's very assertive. It's like they were trying to call me a loudmouth without being incendiary. But
I
the
understand.
the big three for me, I think the first person I found was Charlie Kirk, and I guess he kind of found me. His video just popped in my algorithm one
Yeah.
day. It was Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, and then Steven Crowder, the host of Louder
Yes.
with Crowder. I
Mhm.
listen to them a lot. So Ben Shapiro's debates, he would, I don't know if it was Charlie or Ben Shapiro that frequented California a lot, but how
I think it
Ben
was
and
Ben. I think Ben did
yes,
a lot in
okay.
California.
Yeah, I know he gave a pretty good talk at UC, and
Hmm.
there were a bunch of protesters there, but Shapiro's talks, Charlie's debates, and then Steven Crowder's Change My Mind series. I
Yeah,
watched
I remember that.
I didn't watch a lot of his regular show, but I watched every
Mhm.
single minute of his Change My Mind series. And what one of the sweetest moments was, I don't remember where it was, but Steven Crowder was dressed up as Uncle Sam. And I think it was his opinion was America's the greatest country in the world. Changed my mind. And this lady had sat down with him. She disagreed, but they had a very civil conversation. And then at the end, she gave him a hug and she said, "I need me a good old Republican hug." And that was just
Oh my
that was
gosh,
just
that's
something I
awesome.
watched. I was like, if everybody on the opposite side of the political spectrum in this nation modeled that behavior, how good would things be? It
Hmm.
it it sounds it sounds like a lot of wishful thinking and maybe sounds a little hippie, but literally, if we all just come together, we can have peace. But so
Exactly.
you listened to a lot of them growing up. You got interested in politics along with being involved in your faith. So
Hmm.
you are currently the president of the College Republicans Club here at Mississippi State. So I assume when you met Trump, you probably could have leaned in and said, "I'm a president too, right?"
That would have been a great thing to say. Unfortunately, I'm not that quick witted, but that would have been hilarious. But yeah, no, I'm the current president chairman of the MSU College Republicans. I think I got elected back last spring, but I've been
Yeah,
in it. I've been
tell me
involved
about
since
tell me about how that went. I assume, were you a member of it
Mhm.
beforehand, or okay? So how did all that come about?
Yeah, so I've been a member of College Republicans at Mississippi State since my freshman year. It was during my freshman year, there wasn't a whole lot of people that showed up. The president at the time was Hunter Yelverton. I'm not sure if you know him, but he was really trying to build the chapter back up after COVID and things like that. And then when it came around the spring semester, I got promoted to freshman and transfer liaison. So I would help reach out to freshmen and things that were on campus. And then I just kind of eventually worked my way up through the ranks. I was recruitment director at one point. I was the executive director for a little bit of last year. And then I eventually ran for president, and I ran unopposed. But I have a great exec now, and we all do, great work, and really excited for the lineup of speakers that we're working on getting for this year. So
I would say unopposed is probably one of the best ways to run. Wouldn't you
it
agree?
is. Yeah, no, we've had people that have run against each other, and it just gets drama in such a small club, which is, you always want to avoid something like that. But it was all smooth for me, thankfully.
So you said y'all got some guest speakers lined up. I know the ones that aren't confirmed are the ones that you're in contact with. You might not want to go ahead and talk about that now, but can you tell me
Yeah.
any of the ones that you have coming down the pipeline?
We had our first meeting last night with Mr. Emil Wilson. He's the chairman of the Mississippi Young Republicans. So he came and gave us a talk on conservatism, and kind of where we've gotten off in the realm of politics and how we can get back to healthy political discourse and healthy political dialogue. It was a really great talk, and he had a lot. He's very connected within the state of Mississippi and politics as a whole. Spent a lot of time in D.C., and so he's gave us lots of resources. And so what Mississippi State College Republicans really is here for is to help get people interested in politics, whether or not you're a political science major, but to help get these people connected with the people that can get them jobs and internships and stuff like that when they are wanting to make the next move after college. So,
Okay. So, do you? I'm sure you get this question all the time. I do as well because of how outspoken I am. Do you have any ambitions for political office one day? Congress, president, maybe?
definitely not at the moment. I don't think I would ever run for Congress. I don't necessarily know that's what I want to do. I'm as much as I love politics, I am not a big fan of the politicking, if that makes any sense.
That is,
Um,
I feel you. I hear you loud and clear.
yeah, no. Everybody says, "Oh, you're going to be the next president." I said, "No, I don't put that on me. Being the president's the hardest job in the world, and it's not for the faint of heart." So, whether or not I'll ever run, that's a question I don't know the answer to right now. But I have no ambitions on running. Just looking to really kind of help the church and other people kind of engage with the world of politics through a biblical lens. I think that's what's most necessary right now. We have plenty of good leaders coming down the pipeline. I'll stick to helping the church and others kind of engage with politics the right way.
Well, that is a really awesome answer. I worked because I've had thoughts before about running for political office. So this past
Right.
summer, for a few weeks, I had the opportunity to work with. Do you know Congressman Dale Strong? He's the Huntsville district
Okay. Yes, I've heard of him.
area. So I got to work in Congressman Strong's office. I met him. I met him a couple times. He came in. He popped in one day for a bit before he went on meetings, and then I kind of got to sat down with another intern that was with me and have a private chat with him in his office. And then I saw him again because we had an event planned. It was it was at the Auburn University Research Institute that was in Huntsville. So Auburn had a satellite campus. So that day I just had to hold my breath and mutter "Roll Tide" under my breath as I walked into an Auburn building. But
Yeah.
I got to meet him a few times, and most of the work I did there, very first thing they did was, all right, here's your phone, start answering constituent phone calls. And I had some really, really nice phone calls. And then I got phone calls where I was called every slur and pejorative term that you could ever think of. And I had a couple conversations with some people, because I have a lot of people ask me, "Do you plan on running for politics?" And I answer questions on the phone, and they'll sometimes ask questions, and I'm thinking, I know the answer to this, but I cannot formulate this in the right
Hmm.
way. I think I'm I'm a good I think I'm a good speaker. I know I talk a lot, but the problem with politics is that you could speak for an hour, and you make one little slip up that's 5 minutes long. That's going to be a
You're
soundbite
done.
on
Yeah,
the
you're done.
that's going to be a soundbite on prime time, and then
Hmm.
the whole nation has a perverted view of you just because one little hit piece was run without the surrounding context. I think
Hmm.
I think I would do okay with the hustle and bustle. I do not know how I would handle knowing that there are hundreds of thousands of people out there that are just waiting for me to step out of line or make a slip up, and then it's got you. You know, you're
Hmm.
you're 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 toasted. But I haven't ruled it out, but kind of like you, I'm looking for a lot more stable career long term.
Yeah,
I'd like to go
100%.
to graduate school, get my master's degree, get a nice job doing what I love. Running for office isn't on the forefront. I think I'd rather, if I was to enter politics, I think I'd rather keep doing this show, watch it grow,
Oh,
and
100%.
then I want to hear a bit more about your media company, because I know that
Right.
the tagline I read through your bio yesterday, you try to cover current political events and political
Hmm.
opinions, but from a biblical perspective. So when did
Yeah.
when did, when did you start that company, and when was it that you decided, like, I need to start producing stuff and get it out there?
Yeah. So it all kind of started coming to me around the spring of 2024. I'm in a lot of circles with a lot of different voices and opinions, and I was kind of seeing how not everyone's politics, although they were Christian, was actually rooted in the Bible. And I actually thought this was a big issue plaguing the church. And so I was like, Lord, like, is there something I can do about this to help, kind of disciple people through this? And I took the summer, or took the rest of the spring semester, took the summer, and was really thinking. And I was like, well, maybe if I just do an Instagram page. Well, then my wonderful now fiance was like, why don't you do like a blog? And I was like, well, I said, I've never thought about something like that. I said, I love to write. And I hope I have some good things that people would like to hear. And so I said, okay, we'll do it. And so, um, kind of just worked through that, and we actually just had our 1 year anniversary this last August.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. But it was really designed to kind of help teach people how to have a biblical worldview. That's our big thing, or my big thing at least, is having a biblical worldview. Because if you have a biblical worldview, you're really gonna the lens in which you see the world through is going to be completely different from that of what culture tries to push at you. And so that's our big thing, is teaching people how to do that, but also then like showing people like this is what that looks like, because you can always take scripture out of context. And so we're not trying to do that here. We're really trying to faithfully disciple these people on what this looks like, because I mean, in a world of lies, you're really going to have to know what you believe and know why you believe it. So
Yeah, and that's whenever because there's been several times where I'll quote scripture to somebody. I try to be I try to be super careful about quoting scripture, because understanding the context is important. But, like, what is the context? Is it read the rest
hmm
of the chapter, or read
hmm
that entire book, or read the entire Bible and really study it so that you know all the context? Which, that's one thing I'm kind of trying to do with this show. And have you ever done a Bible reading plan before?
I've started them but never finished them. But I just kind of do my own thing. I go through books of the Bible, or I
Yeah.
go through like one book of the Bible at a time, but never in a specified plan.
Okay, because I'm doing a plan right now that's through my church in Starkville. Do you know Pine Lake Church?
Yes, yeah.
Do you ever go to the Wednesday night sessions that they do?
I know a lot of people that do, but I haven't been able to.
Okay, but they have a plan called the L3 plan, and I've been going to Pine Lake for 3 years. So I ought to know what L3 means. It's one of the words is live, but it's kind of just a statement on how you
Hmm.
need to live your life. It's like it's live, learn. I think it's live, learn, and love. Don't quote me on that, but they have a 2 year reading plan and a 1 year reading plan. I picked up the 1 year, and the first thing I noticed about it was I open up the reading plan, and my first day, you're reading Genesis 1 through 3 and Matthew 1 through 2. I'm like, this is different. So you start off, you're reading about the creation of the world at the same time you're reading about the creation of Jesus. And
Hmm.
then when you move on to Exodus, you're reading Acts at the same time. So while Moses and the Israelites are wandering in the wilderness, over in Acts, Paul is testifying in front of the Sanhedrin about the Israelite
Hmm.
Exodus. So
That's
what
very
I've
cool.
found what I've found really neat about it is that at the same time you read what's actually happening, and then you read the story of the disciples and everybody that are talking about those events and referring to them. But I started out real hot. By the third week, I was on the 10th week, So
Oh wow,
there were
wow, that's amazing.
some days where I'd read 7 days worth of stuff, but then I had to slow down and I was like, I played sports growing up all my life. I'm very competitive.
Hmm.
Am I doing this just to try and see how quickly I can knock this out? Like I need to slow down a bit. My note taking got kind of sloppy. Like when I was reading through Exodus, I'd take one little line that said, "Okay, well, God talks about the procedure for building the tabernacle," and that would be it. I'm like, I'm I'm kind of turning this into a game, and
Yeah, understand.
I need to kind of sit back in it. But what's been so transformative with me right now is that first of all, it's really cool reading through the Bible and being like, that's where that song comes from. Or
Yes,
you're
yeah,
reading, you hear
yeah.
verses and you're reading through Psalms like, okay, so that's the bridge in this super famous worship song. That's
Hmm.
really neat. But
Yeah, no,
what's really
it's
been transformative about that is just it's you cannot explain it any other way except that it is just God's power. That when you read, even if you're reading about some bad things that occurred in the Bible, there's such just a sense of peace that washes over you because you feel that much more connected
hmm
to God. You feel that much more connected to the church. And then when you hear your pastor, it's really awesome when you go to a sermon and your pastor says flip here and you're like, I know where we're at. I know what
exactly.
happened in the previous chapter. I know what's happening in this entire book. That's been neat to me. But so the way I found you was through an article that I saw in the Reflector, which is from our
Hmm.
university newspaper, and it was in light of everything that happened with Charlie Kirk and the stuff going on
Yes.
there. And I didn't read the full thing, but from what I got from the article, you partnered with the president of the college Democrats and y'all came together. So tell me how that came about and what y'all did, because that in today's political climate, just that small action right there on a university campus, that's going to be a spark of hope to so many people out there who's wondering like, where's this world heading?
Yeah, we've gotten a very positive reaction. So much so that I wasn't necessarily expecting that much of a positive reaction.
I don't blame you.
But yeah, no, but it's been great. Walker, he's a great guy. I've gotten to know him since last April or May, sometime in there. But we've talked all summer, and because we're trying to get something in the work for like a panel or discussion between the two clubs on a certain issue. So that's coming to fruition right now. But no, he's a great guy. He actually was the one that reached out to me and the editor of the Reflector about it, asking if that would be something I was interested in. And I said, of course, I think it's a great opportunity to, in a world of chaos and confusion, to offer some glimmer of hope. But no, it was a collaborative effort. He was very gracious throughout the whole process. But we've gotten a lot of very good traction, and I think it shows kind of what's needed. We can't drift so far to these radical ideologies and extremism.
Mm-hmm.
Walker's a great guy, but if from just looking at him, you wouldn't know that he was left leaning or Democrat. He really is. I think what that party should rally around. He's a great guy, stand up dude. Very respectful and cordial, and has been nothing but great to me.
Well, and that's the way I kind of describe it to people. How I think about it is that the 5% of the far left and the 5% of the far right make 95% of the noise. So
Hmm.
a lot of this division that we see here is really artificial because
Yeah.
there are so many people in my life that I disagree with politically, but the conversations we have, I just think if everyone else in the world could sit down and have conversations like this, like if I'm at my office at the department and
Hmm.
I'm talking to one of my professors who I know has a different worldview, and we're both sitting down, sipping coffee, and
Hmm.
just, I guess, figuratively breaking bread together. I'm just thinking, why can everyone not do this? And it's because we've been fooled by thinking that the radical fringes of the party are actually the majority just because they're out there shouting and making the most noise. So what was in that what all was in that letter that y'all drafted, and who were the intended recipients of that? Like, where did y'all publish it?
Yeah. The intended recipients were anybody who was willing to listen, and
Mm-hmm.
and there, we what's the word? I'm looking for a word, but we condemn the
Yeah.
the political violence that's taken place over the last year, starting with the attempted assassination on President Trump, and then also the second one with the assassinations of the Democratic representatives in Minnesota, um, and unfortunately the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And so it was intended for anybody that wants to listen. It's a plea to run from the extremes and to come to common ground where we can actually find it, because we are all Americans, and so we obviously have a lot more in common than we would like to think. But it's the extremes that would like to make us think that we're more divided than they actually are, because they are the ones that actually profit off of our division. It's not the everyday
Hmm.
people that profit off of such hatred and vitriol.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I wouldn't say funny. I'd say it's actually tragic that 10 years ago, the statement "I condemn political violence on all sides," people would be like, well, duh, so do we. Like, what an obvious thing to say. Nowadays, saying "I condemn political violence on both sides," it's so strange that you almost feel like you have to be careful saying something as simple as "I condemn violence," because I know that there's always been division in the world. There's always been bad stuff happening, but it seemed like, especially around the 2024 election and after President Trump's inauguration, it seems like that partisan divide has gotten even worse. And it seems like we are this is probably a pretty bold statement, but I'd say culturally we're probably, at least in my lifetime, we feel more divided than we've ever been, which leads to another obvious point of this world needs Jesus now more than ever. We always need Jesus. We need Jesus in everything.
Yeah,
But right now,
yeah.
every single one of us needs to be on our knees praying for an end to this violence, an end to the division. And I like that you brought up the assassination of the two Democratic politicians, because
Mhm.
people might say, "Oh, you're all up in arms about Charlie Kirk. Where were you when the Democratic politician in Minnesota got assassinated?" You say, "Well, I was right there with you." They're like,
Mhm.
"Well, if
Yeah.
if this same thing happened to Kamala Harris, would you be against it?" And just say, "Yes, I
Yes.
would," because I said this in a previous episode that I did on Kirk, but your political leanings your political leanings do not determine the value of your life in my eyes and in most people's eyes. And it's just a crying shame that simple statements like that have become a radical position.
Oh yeah, it really is a shame. People far too often politicize the death of other people, and I've never understood why, but it's because everyone has an agenda. And I'm just not in the business of wanting to politicize the death of the Democratic Congresspeople, or of Charlie Kirk, or any attempted assassination or any attempt on anyone's life. And so I think that's where we really need to draw a line. Is we have far too many people that use the death of whatever group you're in. If somebody dies in your group, that's some malfeasance, we want to use that to push a political agenda. No, that has to stop. We need to actually get back to human dignity and upholding the value of and sanctity of life. And so I think that's really where the issue lies, is we need to stop politicizing the death of whoever it is and actually just be with our fellow Americans in that moment.
Oh yeah, and I saw something. I saw this echoed after the Democratic politicians in Minnesota were killed, and then after Charlie Kirk lost his life, and it was kind of a message for both sides, and it was a powerful statement. It said, if you care more about the identity, or the if you care more about the political identity of the shooter more than the lives that were lost, your heart is in the wrong
Hmm.
place. If your
Yeah.
first thing is, okay, what was the race of the shooter, or what was the shooter's political beliefs?
Hmm.
What did the shooter what did the shooter think about today's culture? Now, those down the road, the cultural questions, like, who was the shooter radicalized by? Who did the
Yeah.
shooter look up to? Those are relevant questions. But in the
Yeah.
moment, we all just need to take time to say, the people that lost their lives in Minnesota, that was tragic. I pray for their families, and we will find more stuff out in the investigation. Don't jump to the gun and saying, well, of course it was a Republican that shot them. Like, let's focus on that. Or with Charlie Kirk, like, of
Hmm.
course it was a guy with a transgender roommate that shot him. Focusing on all of that
Hmm.
right after a tragedy like that is just an example of how I feel like a lot of us have completely misplaced our priorities, because it's no longer we're mourning deaths. It's let's use these deaths to try and score political points. And it's just,
Hmm.
I've said this a lot, even this episode, but it's saddening to me. I look at
Yeah.
it and it's hard not to get discouraged.
Yeah, no, I mean, ideologies certainly have consequences, and I think it's right for us to point out the harmfulness of the transgender ideology and secular progressivism, and not Democrat, party ideology, but these ideologies and philosophies that undergird political parties. I've had a lot of conversations just today about this, and that's another conversation for another day. Um, but we really need to understand that ideologies have consequences, and Charlie knew that. Charlie knew the cost of what he was going up against, and when an ideology or philosophy is detached from a higher being or God in our sense, we can expect these outpourings of violence, and we can only expect it to increase because the more that we continue to go down this trail of depravity and lawlessness, the more tragedy we're going to see, unless we turn to God, which I really am hoping and praying that is what the case will be. I think we've seen a lot of people really reevaluate their priorities, both on the conservatives as well as the liberal side after the death of Charlie Kirk. But ideologies have consequences, but we don't need to politicize the death of people either.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find the thought here, because something you said had brought up something. But in terms of the ideologies, and certain ideologies are wedded to destruction. That was one of the most inspiring parts of Charlie's journey. The fact that
Hmm.
he knew that every time he stepped foot out in public, there were people out there that wanted to take his life. There were people that wanted to do his harm or do him
Hmm.
harm. But he cared so much about his message that he was
Hmm.
willing to do that. And one of my favorite things he's ever said, I believe it was a Fox News interview where they asked him, what do you want to be remembered for when you die? And he didn't
Hmm.
bring up politics once. He said,
No.
I want to be remembered for my love for Jesus. And that
Hmm.
that that should be a message for all of us, that our
Hmm.
identity needs to be first and foremost in Christ. And I'm not saying that non-religious people don't have a moral compass, because I know some non-religious people that are some of the nicest people I've ever met. But
Hmm.
when you have God's love in you, and you're constantly chasing after God, that is a way to bring people together, because everything is better in a community. The Lord says, where two
Hmm.
or more are gathered in my name, there is a church. So the moment we come together, and the moment we start promoting scripture and promoting the teachings of Jesus, that is probably the only thing that can save us in the long run, because we've gotten to a point where I'm not sure that the actions of a few humans could change the course of this world. We need God in our hearts. We need to give over our lives to God. So I'm just curious, as a fellow younger person,
Hmm.
what would you say has been the most difficult part for you personally of consistently walking with God? Because there's roadblocks everywhere. There's times in my life where I know that I've strayed. For you, what's been the most difficult part of living like Christ?
Yeah, well, I would say two things: laziness and complacency. I think laziness is the ability to not want to do something, but complacency, or I mean, it's not necessarily ability, but the want to not to do something, where complacency is the want to do that thing poorly. And so I think both are equally destructive, because you can be complacent and, active, but you can also be lazy and complacent. So for me, it's really, not getting lazy. It's really, like staying consistent in the things that I'm doing, staying consistent in reading my word and praying and discipling and being in fellowship with others. But it's also, doing these things well, because I'm not just doing these things just to check a box. I'm not doing these things just to get something from God. I'm doing these things to be intimate with Him, to foster communion with Him, and to ultimately know His heart better, so that I can be a better representation of, who He is and His heart. But I think complacency is probably one of the most dangerous things that we can drift into, is doing something that's so good but so poorly.
Our my baseball coach in high school was big on that, where he would, every time we had a good game and we had a big win, he said,
Hmm.
just because just because we run ruled this team we just played, that does not mean y'all start trying any less. He said,
Mm-hmm.
none of you, no matter how good you're doing, you never ever take your foot off the gas. And if
Mm-hmm.
anything, that wind should throttle you up. So
100%.
that was that was what I first learned about complacency in the sports context, but it carries over into religion where it's when you feel like you're doing good, when you feel like you've made a positive turn in your life, that is the worst time to try and,
Oh,
kind of take a step back and say, well, I'm good where I'm at right now. Let's just let's just kind of sit here, because the moment you do that, you're not just going to plateau, you're going to start going down, because the longer you go without actively seeking the word, the
mm-hmm.
longer you go without applying yourself, it's like you can't just pick it back up. You have to almost get back in the rhythm. I'm a huge man of routine, and whenever my
Yeah.
routine gets interrupted for longer than a few days, I get back into my routine, whether it's if I always cook all my lunches on Sundays, or if I
Right.
work out every day. If there's just a week where I'm off and I completely take a break, I get back into my routine, and it suddenly feels like a chore
Mm-hmm.
rather than just part of my life. So for people who want to be more active, let's say that there's somebody who wants to be more active in their spiritual life and their walk with God, but they have absolutely no clue where to start. What would you tell
Mm-hmm.
them?
Yeah, I would tell them to simply just start. It doesn't necessarily matter what it looks like. God doesn't always look at the action, he looks at the heart a lot of times. And so it's like really like, what is your intention behind it? Is your intention to do it all right the first time? Because if it is, you won't ever do it right to begin with. Or is your intention really to seek God and come to know him? And I think when God sees that your heart is in the right place, that he's going to bless you and he's going to enable you and equip you in ways that you didn't necessarily know that he would do before. And so I would say simply to just start, but once you start, to also push through adversity. Adversity will come your way in the life of a believer. Life is already crazy enough, but whenever you become a believer, you just come under so much more. And so to push through adversity, it's always worth it. God's always good. He's always faithful, even when you can't see him. He's always working, things good together. He's always working all things together for the good of those who serve him. And
Mm-hmm.
so first thing would be to start, and the second would just be keep going continuously.
Yeah, it's like God tells Adam in Genesis, which I kind of interpreted kind of as a message to everyone reading it, where he tells Adam, life will produce thorns and thistles for you. Like
Mm,
the road ain't going to be easy. It's not going to be paved with gold. And Jesus tells his disciples in the gospel that when you set aside everything and follow me, this is not going to be some utopic life. Like, you will
mm,
be shouted at, there will be threats on your life. There will be people that want to do you harm. You take on, I don't really want to say it's a burden or a liability, but you take on risk when you
mhm.
decide to follow God, because whenever the enemy sees that you're starting to get closer to God, what does he do? He ramps it up a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit. It's,
Oh yeah.
this person is following God more closely. I can't let that happen. So
Hmm.
you might feel that pull of temptation more. The enemy will try and sow doubt in you. But I really like your point about not trying to do everything right, because I feel
Yeah.
like even if we actively think it or not, all of us in our heads have the idea of what a perfect Christian is, like what a
Oh,
what a
100%.
perfect follower of God is. And as long as we're not doing everything that hypothetical person is doing, we're not a good we're not a good follower of God. So I really like your message about it's not about trying to do everything right to start out with. It's about just beginning and handing your heart over to God, saying, look, this is new territory for me. I,
Hmm.
I don't really know all of the right things to do, but I know that you are my Lord and Savior. So I want to ask you for help. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that point. And just one of the last little bits here, you have you're president of the College Republicans. You're very ambitious in your academic life, and you're running this media company right now.
Hmm.
What what do you want your lasting legacy to be?
Yeah. This is something I've thought about a lot recently, just with everything that's gone on, and it's really, I want to be known for saying the clear truth plainly. I don't want to be known for one. person that just shied away from saying what was true. Obviously say it in love all the time, but I want to be known for being courageous and stating the clear truth plainly. I think there's a lack of truth. I think that's something that Charlie so masterfully did, was stating the clear truth plainly. I think it's just as simple as that. The truth is always good enough, no matter where you are.
Yep, and I'm just because there are a lot of people out there because of this political climate and because of what just happened with Charlie, they have a lot of anger right now
Mm-hmm.
towards the world, towards other people. A lot of people feel hopeless, but mainly, even like me, when I got the news about Charlie,
Mm-hmm.
and then a few hours later found out that he died,
Mm-hmm.
I was completely incensed. I was on
Yeah.
fire. I was angry, but the Bible warns in Genesis when God's talking to Cain about the danger of letting that anger consume him.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just like, because I spoke about this previously, but I'd love to hear your perspective. So, what would you have to say to those that are filled with such anger by what's gone on in this world that they feel so angry and so closed off that they don't feel like pursuing God, and they feel like just letting that hatred boil over?
I think the spirit of Cain is one of the biggest things that is prevalent in our society today. We have so much hatred and vitriol and envy, and everybody wants to blame God for it, wants to blame whoever. No, you have to take responsibility for your actions. Vengeance is God. Is what His words, or vengeance is God's, is what His word says.
Yes.
And so we aren't to take vengeance into our own hands. The government will handle that, and so will God. It's our job to go and make disciples, go and love people. It's our job to pray for our enemies. No matter how much of an enemy they are, it's our job to pray for our enemies. And so we can't allow the spirit of Cain to rule us. We can't allow it to make us become victims and want us to throw pity parties for ourselves and things like that. That's what you see so much, and especially in our generation, everybody wants to be a victim. This is, with a Christian, I think you just cannot. It's incompatible to try to be a victim and a Christian. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the Word of God is so antithetical to victimhood and that whole mentality. So I would say stay away from anyone who intentionally seeks to galvanize you just so they can grow their following. I would listen to the trusted voices that are out there that are biblical conservatives in the realm of politics. I wouldn't just give your ear to anybody. You have to guard what comes in your heart. It's dangerous times out here, and there's lots of wolves in sheep's clothing that would love to capitalize and galvanize you just to further their own pocketbooks.
Yeah, and it's as I believe it's in Ephesians when Paul is writing his letter to the churches in Ephesus. He reminds them that our war is not against flesh and blood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, humans are not here to fight each other. We are not each other's enemy. The real enemy
Mm-hmm.
is the devil and the sinful spirit that has overtaken all of us. So I like your answer about that, where it's you need to remember what the real war is. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
physical one, it's a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual one. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I really like what you had to say with let God be the judge, because I believe at one point Jesus said, like, let he who is without sin throw the first stone at this man. And nobody
100%.
was able to pick up the stone because they all
100%.
realized, none of us are perfect. So why are we ostracizing our fellow brother or sister in Christ because they have faults? But Alex, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on here
It's been a
today.
pleasure.
You are the inaugural guest of the podcast, and I will definitely have you on back again because I feel like you and
I would
I,
love it.
I feel like you and I could talk. I feel like you and I could talk till the cows come home. But
I believe
if
so.
you, yeah, if you want, just tell everybody where they can find you and where they can find your media at, and these links will be in the description as well.
Yeah, so my personal page on Instagram is Alex Martin, but I think my username is AlexANB7. But you can find me at Thomas Truth Media on Instagram. You can find me at Thomas Truth 66 on X. But Instagram is my main platform, and then you can also go to www.thomstruthmedia.org to find us.
All right, well, perfect. Well, once again, thank you for joining. And to our listeners, whenever, wherever, and however you're listening, it has been an absolute honor to be a part of your day. This has been Church and State with Spencer Sanderson.